So I think for parents and for kids, cut kids slack. They shouldn't strive to be perfect.
No,
Um,
absolutely
and
not.
and these admission people don't expect them to be perfect.
No.
And in
You
fact,
distrust an application that comes in where everything is
mhm,
too perfect
is
and
too
too
perfect.
great. Hello, and welcome to the Admittedly podcast. My name is Thomas Caleel. I'm the former director of MBA admissions and financial aid for my alma mater, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. In this podcast, I don't promise easy answers or quick fixes, but I will use my decades of experience to help you achieve your education goals. Now let's get started. Welcome back to the Admittedly podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Peggy Burich Smith, an educator, counselor, and lifelong school leader who brings over 30 years of experience in independent school leadership. From her time as a middle school head to serving on admissions committees at both the middle and high school level, to advising families through some of the most competitive academic transitions, Peggy has truly seen it all. She also happens to be one of the most compassionate and strategic counselors on our team in Admittedly. If you're the parent of a middle schooler, especially one who's thinking about selective high school admissions, this episode is for you. We're going to talk about what matters most in the admissions process, how to help your child thrive both emotionally and academically, and how to approach the journey with clarity and confidence. Peggy, you and I have known each other and been friends for many years. It's such a pleasure to welcome you. I'm so grateful for you sharing your time today. Welcome to Admittedly.
Well, thank you. It is always a pleasure to talk shop. So I am happy to be here. And as I was driving over today, I thought this is a great chance to talk about the wonder and beauty, not just of education, but the middle school beast, which is my favorite.
Yes, and having I have children. My children. You've worked with them, made a wonderful impression on them. My introduction did not even begin to touch the scope and scale of your expertise. I mean, your work at the Kate School at Harvard Westlake. I mean, you are an acknowledged just giant in the field. But can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself? What did I forget? What did I omit? Because there's so much interesting.
Sure. I always refer to myself as a one-trick pony. Schools are all I really know, and I love them. It's the world I grew up in,
Mhm.
as well as the current world that I reside in. And a little bit about my background. From early on, I had an insider's view of school life.
Yeah.
Both my parents were in the business of education. My father was a janitor and school bus driver at my elementary school for 45 years or something like that. And my mother worked as a bookkeeper in the business office at a local college. So from early on, it just seemed like it was the family trade and that I'd go into that. Fast forward to now, of course, and in addition to getting a couple of advanced degrees in education and working in independent schools in California for 30 some years, my husband is a boarding school teacher, a career boarding school teacher, and we have lived our entire married life on a campus. Our children, until they went off to college, had the distinct joy of always having gone to school with their parents. So they had that added pain and embarrassment in their junior high years. And
Yes.
remarkably, somehow we all survived. So that's really all to say that there's always been, and there continues to be, a blending in my life of school and home.
And a very interesting blending, not just of school at home, but also one of the most important transitions, I think, in a young person's life. And that's the middle school experience and the transition to high school. What makes that such an important time?
Well, it's interesting. I'll talk a little bit about middle schoolers because when you tell somebody that you are a teacher,
Hmm.
they typically respond with admiration and appreciation. And over the years, people will regale me with stories of some of the favorite teachers they've ever had. And they say, oh, it's such a noble profession. But the minute you reveal that you work with middle schoolers, or in my case, that I was a middle school principal, they are aghast. And the response is one of horror and oftentimes pity. Oh, you poor thing, bless you. And I would say, to be sure, middle schools and middle schoolers get a bad rap. And is it deserved? I don't think so. I think that middle schoolers are fabulous, and I love being around them. And a little bit of a shout out to the current generation of middle schoolers. I would say that as a group, I find them to be uh, environmentally aware, digitally collaborative, gender expansive, tech savvy, highly imaginative. And my favorite thing about them is they are linguistically inventive. And so they are just, it's fun to be around them. It's great to have them nearby because they can teach us so much. They teach teachers a lot, they teach parents, and they can teach society something. So, yes, middle schoolers can be combative and unpredictable and maybe even a little mean sometime and self-centered. They are also inspiring and loving. And that's what we need to tap into. And that's why they're great to work with, and why I think that transition from middle school to high school is so much fun.
It really is. As the parent of a now rising ninth grader who just went through the middle school, I think your comments are so spot on. Um, One question that I get a lot on social media, sometimes in a questioning way, sometimes a very hostile way, is, like, why do we even work with middle schoolers? Why can't we just let kids be kids? What is so important about that time as they prepare for high school and an academic career, even beyond that?
hmm I've always been fond of that saying. I don't know who said it. The harder I work, the luckier I become.
Hmm.
And so I think
Yes.
in this case, like, why work with them? Because, the virtue and dignity of hard work, and planning. And again, not to obsess on it, not to have, all the eggs in one basket. But I think, planning, thinking about things, talking through things, working hard at something goes a long way. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I absolutely let them be kids,
Right.
but also talk to them. Sometimes I think the word ambition, you know, in our world,
Yes.
has a negative connotation, and it doesn't need to be, but think about, set goals,
Right.
say those goals and work hard towards them and plan. So I think that it's fine to do that in eighth grade, or seventh and eighth grade into high school. Um, I saw a greeting card about 5 years ago. I think I was at the car wash, and they have that bank greeting card, and it was the summertime. And it said, this is the advice the card gave. It said, dance as though no one's watching, text as though it will be read in front of a jury. And I think this was August, and
Words of wisdom.
I thought that's going to be our mantra, for the
Yes.
middle school this year, because I think it gives a blueprint for balanced, benevolent living, which will go a long way in those middle school years. It really asks kids to seek a wealth of experience,
Yeah.
and to recognize the importance of character.
Character always matters, and it's built, I think, consistently over time
Exactly.
with grace for missteps.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Helping, building, guiding, and
Yeah.
teaching.
And, to go with the dance metaphor, you're going to have graceful moves and clunky missteps along the way. And it's all part of it. It's all, part of the beauty of growing up.
No, absolutely. And I think, when you talk about strategy, when you talk about plan, just to give a very concrete example that I'm sure you've seen a lot of times, I spoke with a family just the other day, and the student was at a very kind of prestigious K through 8, and the family didn't really pay attention to the emails that were coming out, and there was a math assessment in 6th grade, cold start right out of summer. They did no prep. They didn't plan ahead. They didn't really pay attention to it. and he got locked into the standard math track, and they're not letting him test out, take the classes. And so now his whole course through high school is set in terms of math, and it's going to impact his intended major. And I know how I sound when I say things like this, and I know that, they're going to come for me in the comments, but what's your thought on that? What's some advice you have for families on how to be thoughtful and proactive without being, for lack of a better term, tiger parenting?
Well, particularly with math, I think that is oftentimes the first time in schools where there's differentiated learning, where some kids might be in algebra, some in geometry, and that kind of thing. And while I would never, ever, ever, after all, I am married to a math teacher, I would never advise pushing a kid into a level that they're not prepared for. If they don't have the proper foundation, absolutely not.
Right.
That said, depending on the school that the kid goes to, a child goes to, maybe they just don't offer a certain course or something like that. So I think it's really wise to be aware of the resources that are out there for remediation, enrichment, fun, that type of thing. And really give a child the best math experience that they can have. And if it means that, doing a little summer work, and again, sometimes people think summer work should not be in a child's life, but if the child is so inclined and wants to do that work, and doing some makeup work or something that will get them into the next level and appropriately so,
Right.
then do that. So I think just being aware of the steps you can take while also honoring the teacher's recommendation.
Exactly.
It's hard as parents because usually most families have one or two middle schooler in their house at some point.
Yes.
Teachers have scores of these kids every year. And so I want to make sure that I say it's always important that to recognize the authority of the teacher. They just have a large sample of kids.
And that usually goes back many years. Exactly.
And the other thing I would say on the both math and language arts, and that's no shade, and I don't want to throw shade on science or the arts or anything, but those are two disciplines that are gonna rear their little, their ugly heads on standardized testing. And so I think that's the other one. I would boost the language arts. And again, you can do that pretty easily in terms of if you're driving to these long soccer tournaments, listen to some audiobooks together,
Exactly.
play some language games, have the family keep a journal on vacations. And sometimes I recommend that to people and they'll say, what world do you live in? And I said, it can dream. I mean, it's the New York Times Learning Network has fabulous contest. They just last week posted, I think they have 8 of them that have to do with reading, podcast, producing things, photo essays and things like that. So just tapping into that, it's much easier to start working on language arts, reading comprehension, writing confidence, vocabulary as a 12-year-old than it is to try to cram in that SAT tutoring, on the verbal stuff before your senior year.
And I've always told families too, and I'd be interested in your advice. Just read graphic novels, read young adult fiction, read. It doesn't matter. Just get out there and stretch your brain.
Yes.
Don't need to be reading Moby Dick.
No. If you're into sports, read sports
exactly.
stuff. I mean, it's
Great.
Absolutely, but just you want to have. I mean, being a lifelong reader is a wonderful thing, and I think playing those games, being alive to language, will make you. You want kids to read with comprehension, listen with discernment, speak with clarity, and write with precision. And so, a little attention to those areas will go a long way.
And so we have our special guest today, Paddington, our unofficial, admittedly mascot. So uh, when we think about all of this, right, we have a lot of families who are turning to us and saying, okay, this is great. How do I get into a highly selective private high school? So what are some of the misconceptions you think parents have about that process? And then also, how can they best prepare? What stands out in a eighth grader's application to a highly selective high school?
Well, I think one thing that parents have asked me about over the years, they've said, "Oh, my kid, he likes a little bit of everything, but he's
Yes.
not a specialist." And they're almost apologizing for that. And in fact, I think that's a good thing that they're not a specialist.
Yeah.
Getting back to that dancing as though nobody's watching. I mean, these years should really be about exploring broadly and deeply. And if you think about a middle school schedule, they are asked to be poets one moment, scientists the next. They're solving word problems in Algebra 1 period and conjugating verbs in Spanish the next. And it really is about engaging in a range of activities and subjects. Some of them that kids love, others that they not so
Not their
much,
favorite.
which is fine. And research really says that this expansiveness is a good thing. It's healthy. In Range by David Epstein, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the
I'm
book.
not, but I will definitely.
It's great. I would highly recommend it. It's a great read. And he really celebrates the idea of being a generalist.
Yes.
And he encourages kids to sample widely, to seek diverse experiences, to recognize the upside of failure, and to keep doors open.
Yeah.
So I think when parents begin to say, "Ah, my kid isn't a specialist, what do I do?" I think that's okay. I think it's age appropriate.
Absolutely.
And it's healthy more than
Yeah.
anything. And if you think about it, these applications will oftentimes ask kids to identify and reflect on a time when they failed or when they struggled, because everybody recognizes that hurdles are a part of life, and that's how we grow and develop. And so I think for parents and for kids, cut kids slack. They shouldn't strive to be perfect.
No. Absolutely.
And these admission people don't expect them to be perfect.
No.
And in
You
fact,
distrust an application that comes in where everything is
Mhm.
too perfect
is
and
too
too
perfect.
pretty.
Yeah. And, nowadays with such an emphasis on mental health and, psychological health, schools sometimes worry that, oh, this child hasn't ever had a setback. What's going to happen when they get to our school? They're a little worried about that almost. So I guess, embrace imperfection.
Yep.
That's part of the program, really. It's part of life. And so I think in terms of parents, that just go easy on your kids. I mean, have them do chores.
Yeah, no, exactly. Building character, but so it's very interesting. So there's a very important word in your last sentence. And not many people talk about this. And I like to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and admittedly and on the podcast. And I think to me, and I'd love your perspective, the most overlooked part of the admissions process for high schools are parents. Right. Because everybody's so focused on the child, the child, the child. And the schools are keeping, in my experience, an equally sharp eye on the parents. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I want to hear your opinion. I've got my take on it.
Yes, I used to tell kids, I would take them through the process, and I would say there are going to be these teacher recommendations, and you're going to be writing essays, and you're going to take a test, and there's going to be a transcript and an interview. And to many of these schools, there's a parent statement and a parent interview. So I used to joke with kids that if you don't get in, blame it on your parents.
Exactly.
You're doing everything right. It must be the parents. And so, yes, parents do play a role in that. It's interesting if you think about kindergarten admissions, that's parents making that decision and driving that ship. College, it's going to be the student but that middle school to high school, it's really both. It's parent and child together. And so figuring out a strategy, being honest with each other about what's going on, can be a really good thing.
And to parents, I think not overselling their child. We're all proud of our children, but being able, I think, to step back and think about the child as a whole and why this decision is being made. And then also, and this usually surprises parents when I tell them that the schools evaluate who's reaching out to them, right? Having the child drive the process. And yes, they know if it comes from, Thomas Jr.'s email account, but is clearly written by a 50-year-old educator, nobody's fooled, right? And little things like school visits, right? Is a child taking the lead, or is the mom or dad pushing their way up to the front? Are they bombarding the tour guide with questions? Or are they allowing the child to drive the process? I think a lot of families don't even realize that's written up, it's evaluated, and it can make the difference
Yes.
between admission or not.
Well, I oftentimes tell parents this is a great time to give your kids practice at being an adult.
Yes.
So even from the get-go, filling out the information, the general information, kids will say, kids nowadays will say, I don't even know what my address is, because they're not used to writing letters and things like that. But, it's time, they'll say social security number. I'll say, well, it's time to memorize it. You're going to be asked that throughout life. So from the easy parts of filling out things, have the kids do that. And then, even I like, the guru of grit, Angela Duckworth. She always says,
Love that.
marathon, life is more of a marathon than a sprint.
Right.
And I think the middle school years are more of a marathon than a sprint as well. And there are going to be these breezy wind at your back miles, and then there are going to be these gnarly blisters and heartbreak hills along the way. And so parents, it's important to just resist the urge to run that marathon for the kids or even be alongside of them. And the parent's job really is to, be on the sidelines, be on the course, and hold signs of encouragement and send words of support, the kid's way. And the same thing is true in this application process. Don't do it for them.
No.
But be there to support, to guide, to listen.
And along those lines, we get a lot of questions from parents saying, what is how do I pick a school? Because there are many exceptional schools, right? And there's obviously the list of, the top ranked boarding schools or the top ranked private schools, but oftentimes that's not the right fit for students. So how do you help families understand and evaluate that?
That's, yesterday I was in town having lunch with a friend, and I saw this mother and daughter kind of hovering around my table, and I looked over, and the mother didn't want to interrupt, but she stopped me, and there she stood with her daughter, and I hadn't seen them in 4 years. And she said, she just graduated from high school and she's going to Dartmouth next year. And then she went on to tell me, she said, this girl went to a specialized boarding school, a fabulous boarding school in the area, Midland. And she said,
It's a very special place.
It's a great place. And she said, you brought that up to us. You brought that school to our attention in 6th grade.
Yeah.
And, we didn't think it was going to be the right thing. We didn't think it was going to be academic enough. And you assured us. And so, I think kind of listen to the people who know your kid, know your child and love your child and appreciate your child, as well as know other kids in schools. So that's where I think an open mind is really important.
Yes.
And you don't have to chase brand names. The most important thing is our kids' health in the long run.
Exactly.
Their relational health, emotional health, physical health. And that's much more important than getting an acceptance letter from a certain school.
Yeah, that you can brag about at the
at the cocktail party.
Yeah, exactly.
So instead of, so I would just say listen to people, those college counselors or the high school counselor or the teachers, because again, they have a large sample of kids. They oftentimes know the area schools, and so having an open mind is key.
Absolutely. And I think doing your diligence and being honest, it's very hard for parents to be honest with themselves a lot of times about their children. They know in their heart, right? And so looking at a school like Midland that is very alternative, or looking at a school like Thatcher that is very intentionally generalist and trying to widen, or a school like Exeter or Andover that is intense and academically focused and really kind of a driven environment, you have to be honest. If you put the wrong child in the wrong school, that's a recipe for disaster. And that's, as a parent, that's not what you want. You want them to thrive, because you're also, for those of our viewers that are out there, listeners thinking, okay, but the goal is to get into a good college. If your child is not thriving there academically, socially, emotionally, they're not going to a good college. They're going to burn out. They're not going to reach the level they want to.
I think the best parenting advice I ever got, and I've shared this with many parents over the years, is, remember, we're not raising kids. We're raising adults, and we're raising an adult that we want to have dinner with when they grow up, that they're pleasant, they are interested and interesting, they're respected by people and they're respected of people. Where they went to school is not the most important.
Exactly. But and so how do parents, because a lot of this is ambition on the part of the child, right? Ambition, curiosity. How as a parent can you support that and nurture that without overwhelming it or suffocating it?
Um, y- you know, there's a lot of research on belonging in schools right now, and flourishing and on belonging. And it's important for kids to have a sense of connectedness and belonging in schools, and for kids to know that there are adults in that community who get them and who appreciate them.
Right.
And so I think, being in it, making sure your child gets into that type of environment, that's why that fit is so important. I think another thing that is really important is, it's hard. It's easy to put emphasis on conspicuous achievement, and I think as a parent, sometimes we're just looking at our child's resume, or a list of things. Do they have awards? Do they have honors classes? Do they have uh, deep extracurricular involvement? And really, what we should focus on is ethical footprint, and what your child says and does,
Mhm.
and how that impacts the community.
Right.
So I think that's something I would put a premium on, really, is, how you want to lead a benevolent life, You want your child to strive to view the world with a compassionate eye and respond with a generous heart.
Right.
So, and if you think about it again, college admission essay prompts or high school essay prompts will ask about a time when you stood up for something you believed in,
Yes.
or supported someone who was being wronged, or they'll ask you to cite a value of of the would-be school and talk about why it resonates with you.
Right.
So I think that just that idea of character mattering, and of really guiding your child to be a decent human being and not just an accomplished,
Performer.
is really, really important.
So one of the things about middle schoolers that I know you've come across is, they're growing, they're forming. When you talk about character and ethics and courage, we learn a lot of that through mistakes, right? And so they might cheat on a test. They might use AI on a paper. They might say something sassy when they're out with their friends because they're trying to figure out how to be cool. Um, is that, I mean, does that mean that everything in their future is cut off? Like, how do you recover
Yeah.
from that?
Yeah. It's never a deal breaker. And it's really how you respond to that. how you grow, how the family responds even.
Sure.
And, it's interesting. I worked with a girl this year. She asked me to help her with her college essays and just brainstorm ideas. And this was a high school senior, and she had a great run in high school. What she wanted to write about as her setback was she was asked to leave in 5th grade because of some shenanigans on a school trip. And there were people, I think her college advisor was saying, oh, you maybe not want to write about that, but she really wanted to write about that.
Right.
And I encouraged her to do so because she talked about what she learned and how she changed and how hard that was for her, but it really impacted who she became. And it was a beautiful essay. It was authentic. It was honest. She was vulnerable. It was all really good. And, in terms of, you talk about middle schoolers making mistakes, I always think about this as parents, every child goes through a difficult time. For some, it's when they're babies and they're colicky. Some are terrible twos. Others soar through, those years. And maybe it's they don't want to go to kindergarten or middle school stuff or high school. So it's going to happen at some point. And if it happens in middle school, I always think that's better than happening in high school.
Exactly. And that's better than happening in college. Yeah.
You learn an important lesson. And again, that self-forgiveness, and you don't want to dismiss what happened or ignore it, but you do want to acknowledge it and see how you grow and change. And, that's what living is all about.
And I think to me, that's a really critical part of why families benefit from working with someone like yourself, really that experience, that guidance. How else can families benefit from working with somebody with your background and deep knowledge?
Well, I think sometimes, and again, it depends on the family dynamic, but sometimes it's really hard for a parent to advise a child or tell a child to do something, and it's much easier for an outsider.
Absolutely.
It's sort of, when I first heard of boarding schools, and again, I married into one, I didn't know about boarding schools firsthand. But I used to think, well, how do parents send their kids away? And then I quickly realized, oh, this is kind of the best of both worlds, because some of the not so lovely parts of parenting, like getting your kid to clean up their room or something like that, are done by other people.
Yes.
And the same thing is true of this. Sometimes a student won't hear it from a parent. Let's set up a timeline for writing your essays.
Exactly.
Let's brainstorm. But they will with an outsider. And so I think it's just one of those items that can be really beneficial to outsource, really.
Absolutely. And when you think about your many years of experience, many families, is there a particular story or family that really sticks out in your mind of just a really tremendous success?
Yes. During the pandemic, so it must have been the fall of 2020, and I was working as the middle school head, the 8th grade year, and it started out, everybody was online. And I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to communicate with these kids? This is going to be a little harder. So I sent out an email to the 8th graders, and I said, I'm not pushing you out the door already, but if anybody wants to start talking about 8th grade, the high school search this fall, make an appointment with me. And there was a boy who was brand new to the school. He was the lone new 8th grader. We didn't have a lot of kids come in as 8th graders. And he reached out within minutes. And he said to me, we were in Santa Barbara, he said, I want to go to Kate school. And can you help me? And I helped him by meeting with him, really talking him through. He didn't have a lot of the resources that some families did.
Right.
He didn't have parents who had gone to college or anything like that, which was similar to my background. And so I helped him and I guided him. And sure enough, again, it was driven by him. I guided him. he did go to Kate, and he graduated last month, and he's going off to Washington University in St. Louis.
That's fantastic.
And it's those kids, another girl last year who said, I want to go to boarding school. And her parents said, what? And she had a very ambitious list, but she did the work.
Exactly.
She wanted to go to Andover, Exeter, and she met with me weekly, and she always had a list of questions. It was exhausting, but it was great. And this May, I happened to be in New England, and I visited her.
It's my favorite.
Exeter, and I heard all about it. And she said, it is so hard. But she's thriving.
Yes.
And so it's just, when things work out, it's great, but sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't work out that you get into your dream school. But those are even more rewarding to talk to those kids, because you'll say, oh, yeah, it works out in the end.
It works out. And I think you build a discipline and character and curiosity. I was listening to your story. I was thinking about one of my most memorable students, this young lady from a very conservative Islamic country, who decided that she was going to boarding school. And so, completely, and this was a while ago when things were very conservative, applied, had the full support of her parents, applied, got in, a lot of work, a lot of back and forth, a lot of kind of cultural translations. She got in, calls me and says, I'm in. Now, what do I do? It's club day. What do I do? And I said, I don't know, go pick a couple things that scare you and have fun. Ended up maybe 110 pounds soaking wet, ended up being captain of the girls' varsity crew boat, which, rowers, they're all twice her size and 3 times her bulk. And she was in there, and it was just this transformative experience where she found her voice. She found, she'd have to train in secret over the summers when she was home, got her way, then she got all fired up, decided to do gender studies and economics at an Ivy, got in and came out and is now just absolutely ruling the world. And so proud of her, and to watch that arc and watch those younger students find their voice, find their autonomy. Sometimes the parents aren't entirely happy about their new autonomy, but I love it. And that's something that sticks with me for sure.
Yes.
And so when you think about, if you could give one piece of advice to a parent who is just starting this journey, they have middle schoolers, they're just starting out, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I think one would be, can I give two?
You can give as many as you want.
One would be to introduce activities to your kids.
Okay.
And so, and that is, again, just to keep all these options open and doors open. And so, if you have a child who is really all about sports, take them to a concert or a show. If you have a child whose ideal day is sitting in the house alone, reading or gaming, organize a hike outdoors. Introduce activities. And this might sound like a contradiction, but it's really a companion to that. Support your kids' passions.
Yes.
And especially, and this is the hard part, when they are different from your own.
Yes.
So if you are a business family or an engineering family, you've got a kid who wants to study humanities.
Yes.
Help them, support them in that. And so I think those are really important as you're starting out. And then I think also, just going back to that character piece, do things like introduce your kids to gratitude, to gratitude and to service, community service and things like that. Get them to put the needs of others, maybe the needs and interests of others before their own. And so, for example, with gratitude, if it becomes a practice, and a habit, it's great. So when your child has ended a sports season or a class, have a good supply of stationery at home and have the kids sit down and write thank you notes, and do things like that. And the same thing with looking around the community and thinking of how can I help? And it might be to connect your passion to service. You're a really good ceramicist. Well, maybe you donate bowls that you've made to the soup kitchen, local soup kitchen. So to explore, experiment, and also to give.
And I love that. I love everything about that. And one of the things, the feedback that I get a lot of times is that, oh, all of these things you're prescribing for our kids to do their classes, you have to be rich, you have to be this. And I'm like, no, not really. Right. There are things you can do certainly that require money, but there are a lot of things like service, volunteering that don't require money. Yes, they require time. And I understand that that's a constraint for some families, but this is about authenticity. It's about, and I don't even use the word, some middle schoolers have passions, but interests. Help them nurture it. It's a seedling, you grow it. I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. It is such a gift for me, but most importantly for our families, for our followers, to hear from you. For those of you following along, please be sure to visit our socials, TikTok and Instagram at AdmittedlyCo. If you have questions for Peggy, if you agree with things she said, if you disagree with things that she said, please come in the comments, let us know. We look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to answering you. And Peggy, we are honored, deeply honored to have you on our team, guiding our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, and really look forward to watching the impact you can make on families going forward. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Thomas. I didn't set out to be a middle school person, but it brings me great pleasure.
I'm going to say middle school guru. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Admittedly podcast and download this episode. I welcome you to share your thoughts and questions with me. You can find us on social media at Admittedly Podcast. I look forward